biggest declines in uninsured individuals over the last several years. So how has the department maximized their ability to get revenue from Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, right? There are services that assist with that. So what's our track record in getting reimbursed for runs?
If it's okay, Councilman, I'm going to divert to Daniel because the billing falls under OMB.
Sure. And Daniel Brock with the Office of Management and Budget. Yes, with the expansion of the ACA, we did have a decline in uninsured. We basically have four types of payers, and I think it's important to distinguish those. Our four types of payers are Medicare, Medicaid, and they pay a federal rate. It's not really a matter, it doesn't matter what is charged. They have a set rate. And then third-party insurers, I'm lumping as a group. There obviously are different insurers that have different contracts at the rate. And then the last one is self-pay, which could be either the deductible or the uninsured or underinsured. So those are the general mix. We have been seeing, as we've had more suburban fire districts offering ambulance services, a shifting in our payer mix more away from Medicare and third-party insurers, which tend to pay the higher levels, and more towards Medicaid and self-pay, or in some cases uninsured. So in terms of maximizing revenue, we transport whoever we are called to, and then we have a similar collection process on Medicare or Medicaid on any of those. The contracts themselves, we annually review when they come up.
I guess my follow-up question there is, and then I do have one more question, Chairman, before I conclude here. Would that fall under agency receipts? And if so, it looks like it's being halved from last year to this upcoming year. I'm assuming that's where reimbursements from any one of these payers would show up. No, that actually goes, those receipts are actually more associated with EMA. Emergency Services covers both EMA and EMS. And so those receipts, what you see, you'll see an increase in state grants if you go just a couple of lines down on the page 99. So basically that's an accounting change. We have two types of receipts that come in for EMA. One is a local wired charge for 911 when you have a local phone system. And then the other is a state-funded cell phone 911 charge that is distributed to us through a formula. So what we did was change the accounting for that in terms of directly booking the state grants. And you can see in FY20, it was at $3.1 million. It's budgeted at $3.2 million this year. So that's a change in accounting procedure. The EMS fees themselves are on page 43, and that's part of the general fund table. And they are budgeted to be $8.9 million this year. And how is that? So I don't have my book in front of me, and I apologize. How does that compare to the last 2 years, for example? Do you have that in front of you?
Well, for FY20, for current year estimate, it's flat to FY21's current year estimate. For FY20, it is down it's down about 20%, which is commensurate with our decrease in transports. We've seen through April 30th about a 20% decrease in transports.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused then. I thought Jody was just saying we've seen an increase in transports.
He said there's been an increase in call volume. There's a distinction between not every call results in a transport. So an accident might have 5 vehicles, go out, but only one might transport somebody.
So if we're seeing a decrease in transports, we've already admitted we're seeing an increase in suburban suburban EMS activity. Why aren't we seeing that? I mean, frankly, if I'm looking at your employment numbers, they're down to the lowest level that we've seen in years, but we're seeing these continuing huge increases in your budget. I'm not driving these trends, right? Decrease in runs, decrease in employees, increase in cost. Shouldn't we be adjusting based off of the new norm, which is including the suburban EMS?
So we have increased in run volume, and we can't. I mean, a lot of our decrease in transports was because of COVID. There wasn't a lot of people that was going to the hospital, so we expect that to go back up to where we, to where we were at, transporting up into the 70s and 70,000 or so, as we did several years ago. So. And we've still, the majority of our responses, we are obviously the busiest. You can see on the scale in the PowerPoint, but we are the busiest, agency throughout Jefferson County, and we've still got to continue to, to respond to those.
No, understood. I'd expect you to be the largest. There's no individual suburban EMS that's as big as Louisville Fire, right? Or Louisville EMS, excuse me. And that's my last question. 90% or so of similar urban departments are combined EMS and fire. All of our surrounding suburban fire and EMS are combined. I've been asking this almost every year, but now I'm really starting to get to the nut of it, which is, are we that much smarter than everybody and they're all dumb, or are we just that different? Why can't we merge these departments as most of these other urban departments do, and even the suburban departments that surround us do?
Well, I appreciate the smart comment. That was nice. My background, I come from the fire service, obviously, and I spent some time in the 90s when, and I've mentioned this before, when EMS was brought into the fire department. I've studied it. I know this has been brought up, like you said, Councilman. It's been brought up every time I come to this hearing, and I'm a firm believer that the system that we've got now, that fire-based EMS, the way it would be set up and the way it was in the 90s, I don't like the way it was set up. I don't think it works. Firefighters don't sign up to ride ambulances. They just don't. I was a firefighter. That's the mentality. That's, you see that everywhere. The fire-based EMS, in the suburban areas, they've helped the system. I'll admit that every single day. But the reality of it is, they were able to raise their taxes, and that ambulance came along with it. It does help. They do a good job. But I don't believe the type of fire-based EMS would work. And keep in mind also that we still go out into the suburban area as well. We still protect, technically our location is still out in the entire Fairdale area, the Camp Taylor area, and our license is for Jefferson County. It's not just for the urban service district.
Yeah, but I understand that, but I think the ratio it's 10-1 suburban districts coming into the urban district as opposed to the Louisville EMS going out into the suburban areas. I'm and it's commonplace that bordering districts always have these joint agreements and they have to cover each other. It's state law, state reg, right? So I'm understanding of that. But, you say you believe this won't work. I need proof now, right? Because again, forget suburban fire. There's many other, and it's not a small number, urban departments in similar sized cities, bigger cities in some cases, that do this combined model. So I really need to understand. We could take this offline, and I'm done, Mr. Chairman. But I just need proof of why. Not just we believe it won't work, and I realize there was a historical problem. Then let's fix that historical issue, right? Or do it better. But it just seems weird to me that other similar sized cities can pull this off and we can't. Now, again, if there's something I'm missing about why we're so unique, comparatively speaking, then let's document that. But I'd just like to get some more specific detail on why we can't do it, not just.
And I'll say this, Councilman.
I would.
When you have a third service, agency, their sole focus is medicine. And that's where some of the other larger cities, in counties throughout the United States are successful because they're third-party EMS agencies, is because that's all they focus on is medicine and emergency response. And Councilman, if you'd like to come over sometime now that things are opening back up, and we can continue this discussion.
I would also just add that I think.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, it's a little unfair to Director Myman because I think he's inherited a structure that was really a political structure from consolidation and where we have a bifurcated fire service, and the suburban fire districts have been merging since 2003 and consolidating. And I think even in comparison to other cities, we're unique in that we don't have contiguous boundaries for both tax and for fire service and for EMS service. So it is a little bit of a mix, and it's unusual. I don't believe that there are other cities that are situated where there are taxing districts that tax separately, but we still have a overlapping non-contiguous boundary of service. So, I think that is a complicating factor, regardless of whether EMS was placed back into a fire-based service. I will say financially, we have looked at it many times, and currently the way the state statute's written on 24 hours on for firefighters and 48 hours off, for EMS, it would be an expensive proposition to move from their current schedule of 7/12s to a 24/48 because you would have built-in overtime, and obviously for a 24-hour shift, you would need some downtime or some rest time for them. So moving towards that would be something that would, in our view, be more expensive aside from the medical items that Director Myman mentioned.
Just a final compliment, Jody did a great job. When I did get to see the what's it called, the control center there, what's the name of it?
Right. The Emergency Operations Center.
Oh my gosh, outstanding job! Seriously, it was tremendous. I was blown away, and thanks for all your work. I know that was an incredibly tough time for all you guys, and it was terrific what you all did. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just one comment about the increase in the budget, and I think we have to keep this in mind for every agency, but particularly for these hazardous duty workers. There's about a $1.5 million increase in the retirement cost for this agency. And so if you add the 1.5 and the $1.6 million in the triage, you get the bulk, not entirely, but the bulk of the general fund increase. And that's true in a lot of different departments as we move forward. Councilwoman Fowler. Councilwoman, do you want me to? There you go. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I don't know whether it was because it was on the grid or what. Now I'm seeing myself. I'm not seeing Jody. So anyway, I wanted to congratulate you, Jody, on the award, the Outstanding Call Center of the Year. I mean, that's phenomenal. I'm very proud for you because that's a great honor. I had a question about emergency protective services. Does that fall under you?
No, ma'am, it does not.
Does anybody know?
Explain if you could explain where you're.
Well, there was an inquest warrant done a couple of times out here in my district, and the emergency protective services were the ones who transported the person. So that's why I was asking.
No, ma'am, that falls under the police and the court system and the county.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you for the hard work you do and your whole team, because I know that you've got a dedicated staff out there, and kudos on all you've done this year, because I know it has been a tough year. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the compliment. It wasn't me. It was the people. They're the ones that got it.
No,
they did it.
I know it's the people. Yeah, that's why I want to make sure you tell them too. So thank you.
I will.
Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, Chairman Hollander. Jody, a couple of questions. I want to piggyback a little bit off of Councilman Piagentini's questions. First, I just want to confirm. I know last year, maybe now 18 months ago, we had an issue with a response to a fire that was sort of on the border with St. Matthews of who the responding agency was. I understand we've resolved that now, and we have an MOU with all of the suburban districts that whoever the closest unit is will be called to respond. Is that correct?
It's partly correct, Councilman, and we did some really aggressive work, and then to be honest with you, it got stopped by COVID because everybody that was working on the system issues here got put into other roles. And we went back to that at the beginning of this year. And currently the MOU is being signed by all the chiefs, and all of our folks are working on all the technological issues that have to take place. And it's called the +1 response. It's where the closest from the other side, from either the urban side or the suburban side, would come into, and it's a half mile into each side of their jurisdiction. But yes, it's very close to implementation.
Good. I applaud you and the suburban districts for their work on that, because I think, anybody knows that if they've got a structure on fire or a vehicle on fire, they don't care what it says on the side of that fire truck, right? They want the closest truck to respond and put it out. And I'm glad that we've resolved that, or that we're near resolving that issue, yes, and look forward to that resolution.
And it is, Councilman, just to let you know, it is for the higher priority EMS and fire calls. So,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
okay.
So not for everything, right? But
not for everything, yes, sir.
But, I mentioned, I wanted to piggyback off Councilman Piagentini's questions a little bit, and so I just want to throw out there, and Jody or Daniel, I don't know if this has been done. If not, I would challenge us to do this. But if we had sort of threw all the rules out the window, right, and you didn't have legacy labor contracts, and you didn't have suburban fire districts, and you didn't have different ambulance districts, like, what would be the ideal model for the most efficient model for Jefferson County for fire and EMS service, right? That provides the acceptable level of response, right? Where would those fire stations be? I'd love to see some sort of study that shows us that, where we can then layer on top where the suburban districts are and where the metro districts are. Because I think that sort of gets to the heart of Councilman Piagentini's question, right? Of where is that ideal mix? And obviously when you have, metro covering the entire area, and then you've got suburban layered in, you're going to have some level of inefficiency. And I think that's okay. I don't think anybody's expecting the system to be 100% efficient, given the unique structure of our metro and suburban districts. But I'd love to see just sort of a study on what is that ideal, and then how close are we to that, or what do we need to do to get us closer to that?
And I'll comment, and Daniel, you can chime in if you'd like, but there was a study done, and I believe it was 2013 or 2014, where they did perform that study, and all the stakeholders that you mentioned and even more were in those meetings, and it was recommended then not to merge EMS into fire.
Yeah, so just to clarify, my question is less about merging EMS and fire and more about just coverage in general. So even if you were to consider sort of, here's the optimal EMS map and here's the optimal fire map, right? So my question, I guess, it's slightly different than Councilman Piagentini's, because it's not really, my sole aim is not to figure out should they be merged or not. It's really sort of where should fire stations and ambulances be deployed across the county for optimum response times.
Right. So,
sure. And I can speak a little bit to it, Director Wyman, and also we do have Chief Frederick coming at 4:00. But we did have a Tri-Data study. That was the company that performed the study, and it was sometime, I want to say around 2007 or 8, but it was only for the urban service district. It wasn't for the county-wide. And as a result of that, for example, we had 2 firehouses on Frankfurt. One was closed. We also ended up, we used to have a firehouse at 6th and York. One was closed there. It has not been done, to my knowledge, countywide. I don't know if Director Wyman or Chief Frederick can speak to the suburban piece, but I know that the urban one USD was done probably about 13 or 14 years ago.
And Councilman Winkler, I won't speak for fire, especially since Chief Frederick's coming in after me, but, the optimal EMS system that would be out there would be, you constantly move your trucks around depending on, the busy, one area may be busy, one area may not be busy. And, with the suburban departments having their license, all the suburban departments that have ambulances except for one, their license is for Jefferson County, the entire Jefferson County as well. St. Matthews, theirs is a little bit different, but for the most part, it covers St. Matthews, the entire Jefferson County. But to be able to, to move trucks and I've always said, if you're dispatched, go. And if you're the closest truck, go. So that to me would be the optimum, EMS agency. And then the EMS response, type of matrix. You also have to think about the medicine. What care are the people in, the west end of Louisville getting compared to the care, somewhere else? So the consistent medical protocols are something that we've asked all the departments to do. Our doctors, all of our medical directors, they meet on every other month or every quarter to make sure that we're consistent with things like that as well.
Which I understand and certainly applaud, but I guess what I'm having a hard time with is if we don't know the answer to a city of the population of Louisville and the size of Jefferson County, like what is the optimal number of ambulances that cover that geographic area? Department aside, right? Sort of do you need 20 ambulances? Do you need 80 ambulances? Do you need 37 ambulances? Like what's the right number? And I'm sure that has okay, if you want a 7-minute response time, then it's 60. If you want a 3-minute response time, then it's 90. Like, do we have that number? Again, not just for the urban service district, but for the county as a whole.
Between 45 and 50 is that number. And we're close to that now, depending on time of day. There's sometimes we have fewer trucks, at 2:00 in the morning versus 2:00 in the afternoon, things like that, just because of run volume and stuff like that. But that's the optimum number.
Okay. And we have how many between Metro and the Suburbans?
Right about 45.
Councilwoman George.
Thank you. And thank you, Jody, for the presentation. Wanted to ask about something you mentioned. Can you share a little bit about the community paramedicine program?
So that's where we can send paramedics in cars to a location where someone may not need an actual emergency ambulance to transport them. So maybe if it's somebody that's got a stub toe or a bloody nose or some type of minor medical, in their eyes, emergency. Obviously, anybody that calls 911, it's an emergency in their eyes, and that's the way we look at it. But it's something that may not need that transport truck, and it keeps those ambulances on the street for somebody that may truly need that for a transport.
Interesting. My next question has to do with staffing and retention, and I'm interested to know what efforts are being made to increase retention.
So, our main focus is to try to get our people to go home, and we're short-staffed. You can see in the budget book. I think Councilman Piagentini said we're at the lowest that we've been at, but we're trying to get back to full staff. So, we're trying different things. There's our ARP project potentially for an increase in pay rates for EMS. The long hours are the biggest thing that our people complain about, and that's the thing that we're trying to eliminate with them now. If they want to go home, we want them to be able to go home.
So I was going to ask if upon separation, you do an exit interview so that you're capturing reasons people leave, and it sounds like what you're saying is the biggest is the hours.
Yes, and we do those exit interviews, and that's where we get that information from.
Okay, excellent. And then my last question is really just around the fact that you have such tremendous campaigns under you in the way of ushering in safety for the community. So whether it's Lens Alert, Smart 911, things beyond the 911 operator that much of the community takes for granted. Our 311 staff, which I know have done tremendous work, you mentioned the increase during COVID. I'm interested to know, in the spirit of public education, what line item in the budget speaks to the funding that you have available to really be able to communicate broadly out into the community about whether it's Lens Alert, Smart 911, or just how to best interface with your 311 operators so that folks understand really what they can expect with government, and that, you know, we're restoring faith in the civic process.
We don't have a specific line item for public education. We pull from different line items within the budget to do that. You know, especially the RAVE system that actually powers Lens Alert. You know, that's in its separate line. You know, a separate line item and things like that. So we pull from different lines to be able to fund those projects.
All this to say, I think your staff are doing amazing work. We just want to make sure broadly out in the community that everyone knows about that, and that, again, when they call 311, they know how to best interface. They're having the best experience in the way of what to expect and how local government can serve. So thank you.
And we appreciate that as well. And to all the council members, you know, it's always out there. If you have community meetings or neighborhood meetings or anything like that, we'd love to be invited to them and set a table up. We'll speak at them. Any topic you'd like us to cover, we'd be glad to come.
Yes, your staff are very eager and willing to come out. I worry about the people that we sometimes miss because they're not connected with us, and maybe they're not coming to the neighborhood meeting. So that's really who I'm concerned about. But thank you.
I did see, by the way, I think I saw a news story today about the fact that you have openings and you're actively seeking applications.
Yes, sir. And that's in the 911 center. Yes, sir.
Right. Councilman Ingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Imami, congratulations. As everybody has said, actually, many of my questions, for the most part, were just taken by my colleague from District 21, but I do want to make sure I get total clarification again. Was our total fleet of ambulances 45, and that was Metro and Suburban and Metro? Or could you break those down for me, please, so I understand that again?
We try to run 20 trucks a day, and then the rest of those are covered from various suburban departments. And, you know, sometimes, you know, it varies through the day, through the time of day, you know, and things like that. You know, some departments train, we train, you know, so, I mean, it varies, but that it's different with the agencies. And I don't have specifically in front of me how many each agency has beyond ours.
And how many are those fully funded or tell me about that?
As far as hours?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're fully funded.
And then I want to pursue a line of questioning with our EMTs. What's their starting pay?
They start at $16.24 an hour. Our EMTs do.
And how does that compare to like cities? I know we've done some serious research on this
right.
And data, but would you explain where we sort of fall within like cities and that, if I could ask you that?
Right, and I'd rather, if it's okay, just to we'll talk more about the local area instead of the same size cities. And our paramedics, I'll go ahead and tell you, they start at $19.48 an hour. As you know, so that's our two beginning medical personnel, and they're, as far as the area, they're lower than they're $3 to $4 an hour lower rate of pay than a lot of agencies or most agencies throughout the area. And that's been a retention issue as well. We've had a lot of folks that have left and went to other agencies because of that lower pay rate. When we settled our collective bargaining agreement in 2016 and 17, we were actually one of the higher paid EMS agencies in the state of Kentucky. And again, we've had several agencies come on board. They've paid their people more than ours, and we've lost a lot of people as well. And they get some different stipends if they become firefighters or firefighter certified, and they also have, a lot of them have free family insurance, which is an attraction as well.
I guess I'll just conclude with a comment. I mean, we oftentimes hear teachers are underpaid. This is a career that you certainly love. You're an EMT, but loving a career and getting these folks competitive in the job market is another thing. So if we're not competitive, we need to figure out a way to get competitive. And so I'll just conclude with that, Mr. Chairman. Great conversation. Thank you.
And thank you, and all of our people will appreciate that as well, Councilman.
I would just add to what Director Myman was saying. One thing we have done with this budget, and it was at the overview, is move to family insurance and other insured that have a zero premium cost, which is a attractive benefit when the prior year it had been about $305 per month for family coverage at the individual level. So that, even though it's not in the pay scale, that's effectively putting $3,600 back in the paycheck.
Councilwoman Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations, Director Myman. I'll second what everyone has said about the great work you all do. I have a question specifically about the 911 center that sort of arose when I was dealing with a constituent issue a couple of weeks ago. We had a situation where there was a constituent who called 911 because of a shots fired issue, and I gather that having looked into this, that all of the officers in the division were assisting on either traffic accidents or other things. And so the shots fired call was held for 40 minutes, which meant that no one was dispatched and the person didn't arrive until 50 minutes later, which led to let's just call him very determined constituent to be chasing some armed suspects down a street. And so my question, I recognize that, resources are what resources are and decisions have to be made about how to dispatch folks, and that a lot of times you're operating with incomplete information. I guess my question is twofold. One, sort of, what is the policy in terms of if, there aren't enough resources? Can you explain to me how a dispatcher makes those decisions or might communicate to try to pull resources to different places? And then sort of my more budget-focused question is just, are you all asking, again, I understand that decisions have to be made and that people operate with incomplete information. Do you have all of the sort of communication, sort of technologies, infrastructure platforms, all of the things you need? Are you asking for everything to sort of be the most successful in communicating with partners and making sure that you can have an efficient response to situations?
Yes, thanks for the question. So on the first part of your question, that's the police sergeants and lieutenants. They make those real-time decisions on what to hold and what not to hold and what to send on. Our dispatcher lets them know what they've got. Obviously, they evaluate and know what's going on in their divisions and their beats, and they make those decisions. As far as your technology question, that's a great question because our computer-aided dispatch and a lot of the computer programs throughout Metro that deal with public safety are getting outdated. And the council and the mayor put in the budget last year to begin the process to get a new computer-aided dispatch. So we recently received the request for proposals back just a couple of weeks ago, and we're currently reviewing those now. And that's going to be about a total in about a year and 8 month project. And we'll have, we should have top-notch, we will have top-notch computer-aided dispatch here in the center, and it will also, the police department's getting the new records management system, and I believe that the corrections department is looking at a new jail policy type of program as well, all at the same time. So we will have top-notch very shortly.
Great, thanks for that information.
Jody, I don't see anyone else in the queue. I did want to thank you for the presentation, and Councilwoman George made this point a little bit, but it's Councilman Piacentini says I have a spiel about the library. I also have a spiel about 311, so I'm going to say that. I think 311 sometimes doesn't get, I know it does from you, but from us, I don't think it maybe gets quite the attention that it needs. But in my view, a call center is your front door to the public. And if people have a bad experience when they call 311, I don't care what we do or what the mayor does or what anybody else does, they don't have a very good view of the government. So I very much appreciate the people on 311. I know you do too. And I've just passed along our compliments to them and of course to everybody on your team.
Thank you, Councilman. And since I've got a couple minutes here, if I could have those, just a couple. Thank you all for all your support, all your budget support that you all have done for us, and I can't say how proud I am, of the people. If it's one agency that stepped up, from March the 8th last year, it was emergency services. We had people that, were put into roles that they never ever expected to be put into. We ran the master testing site for all the public safety throughout Jefferson County. We assisted with the vaccination. Then you got into the protest, and we had to, Councilman Piagentini saw it, where we had to, set up the emergency operations center, but we still had to stay COVID. We still had to use COVID precautions, and I don't know how. To my knowledge, nobody in the emergency operations center got COVID. It was just the precautions. Kelly Jones, my deputy, all the staff. I can't say enough about them, from EMS to 911, to everybody. And we just put our people. We had a third party vendor come in the last 2 weeks and put all of our leadership, all of our managers and above through a mandatory leadership training, or as much mandatory as we could make it. There was obviously some people that couldn't make it, but about 95% of our leadership staff went through an outside vendor's training, and it was really, really good. And we learned a lot about the agency and a lot about things, how we need to move forward. So we thank you all for the support and everything you all have done for us.
Let me just ask one more thing, or make one comment, and I want to make sure I'm asking the right person. I know that Chief Frederick's coming in a minute. If you tell me I should ask Chief Frederick instead. The fire that Councilman Winkler mentioned was actually in my district, and there were actually two in the border of Louisville fire and St. Matthew's fire. When do you think we will be able to have a public announcement of the +1 response?
Currently, we're getting the maps. Each department is adjusting their maps right now to make sure. So an example of that is we drew the line. And our technicians drew the line, but if the line goes through a neighborhood or an apartment complex, we want those departments to be able to capture the entire neighborhood, especially where it's got one entrance and things like that. So they're going through and methodically taking their district and making sure that what needs to get covered is getting covered. So that process actually should be done next week, and then we're going to get those addresses entered into the system, and we should be making some type of announcement, hopefully within the next month.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to everybody in the department. Thank you for being here. With that, we will be in recess. Metro TV needs to readjust here before we start the Louisville fire hearing. So we will take a 2-minute recess and start right back in 2 minutes. Council members, stay on this same WebEx meeting. Thank you.